All right, let's talk about studying. What if I told you that the way most of us do it is just fundamentally wrong? Seriously, for decades, we've all been relying on one main technique, and a whole mountain of science says it's one of the least effective ways to learn anything. You know the feeling, right? You're highlighting, you're rereading everything for the third time, and you feel like you're getting it. You feel confident, but then the exam comes, you look at the question, and poof, it's just gone. It's so frustrating. And hey, it turns out you are not alone in this, not by a long shot. Just how common is this habit? Well, get ready for this number. A staggering 84% of students say that rereading and highlighting is their main way of studying. It's the default setting for almost everybody. But here's the kicker. It doesn't really work. So if it doesn't work, why on earth do we all do it? Why do we stick with a method that lets us down? Well, it's because rereading creates this powerful but totally deceptive feeling that we're learning. Let's dive into this psychological trap. It all comes down to something called the illusion of fluency. When you read something for the second or third time, it feels easy, right? It feels familiar. And your brain kind of gets tricked. It mistakes that familiarity for actual mastery. You think, oh yeah, I know this stuff. But what's really happening is you're just recognizing the words on the page, not the actual concepts behind them. And look, this isn't just some vague idea. Researchers at the NIH absolutely nailed it in a 2019 study. That false sense of security, that's the real danger. It's what makes you close the book and think, yep, I got this. When, well, you don't. Not really. You've just made it feel familiar. Okay, so if passively rereading is out, what's in? What actually works? Well, thankfully, there's over 100 years of research pointing to a much, much more powerful alternative. It's called the testing effect. You'll also hear it called retrieval practice, and the name pretty much says it all. Instead of just passively trying to shovel information into your brain, you actively, and that is the key word actively, practice pulling it back out. It's a total game changer. You stop being a spectator just watching your notes go by, and you become an active player in your own learning. Now, this graph is amazing. It shows everything we're talking about in one picture. So check this out. After just 5 minutes, who do you think did better on a test? The group that just restudied. That's the illusion of fluency in action. It gives you this false boost in the short term. But then, look what happens after just 1 week. The lines cross. It's a total reversal. The testing group remembers way, way more. That's the crossover effect, and it is the key to all of this. So here's the bottom line. Restudying, it feels easy, it's comfy, but it's like writing in the sand. It disappears fast. Now, retrieval practice, actually testing yourself, yeah, it feels hard. It can be a real mental workout. But that struggle, that's not a sign you're failing. That's the feeling of your brain actually building stronger connections. The difficulty isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's the whole point. Okay, I can hear you now. This sounds harder, which means it's going to take way more time, right? Well, you'd think so. But what's incredible is that the opposite is actually true. Retrieval practice isn't just more effective, it's also way, way more efficient. Let's jump back to that 2019 NIH study for a sec. So they took a group of pharmacy students and split them up. One group just rewatched a recorded lecture. Classic passive review. The other group had to use retrieval practice by answering questions about what was in that lecture. The first thing they looked at was just how long did it take? Okay, so the rewatchers, they spent, on average, 35 minutes. And the retrieval group, get this, just 12 minutes. 12. That is not even a third of the time. But here is where it gets really wild. A week later, they tested everyone. And even though they spent so much less time studying, the retrieval practice group remembered almost exactly the same amount of information. 53% versus 56%, that's basically a tie. Just let that sink in for a second. The same results in a fraction of the time. If that isn't the definition of studying smarter, not harder, I don't know what is. All right, so by now, I hope you're convinced. The science is solid, retrieval works better, and it's faster. So the big question is, how do we actually start doing this? Well, the best part is, it's really not complicated. You can literally start tonight. So here are a few super simple strategies. A brain dump is a great one. After a lecture, just take out a blank piece of paper and scribble down everything you can possibly remember. No peeking at your notes. Flashcards obviously are a classic for a reason. They force you to pull that answer out of your head. But one of my favorites, because it's really creative, is the idea of transforming your notes. So, how does transforming your notes work? It's super simple, just 4 steps. First, you read a chunk of your notes or your textbook. Then, and this is the most important part, you close the book, put it away. Step 3 is where the magic happens. You try to turn those ideas into something else, something visual, like a little diagram or a mind map, all from memory. And then step 4, you check your work and see what you forgot. See, this forces you to actually process the info, not just stare at it. Okay, so once you've got the hang of retrieval practice, we can level up. There are 2 more powerful boosters you can add to the mix to make this stuff even more effective. Think of them like power-ups for your learning. First up, spacing. Super simple idea. Don't cram. Instead of studying for 3 hours straight on a Tuesday night, do 1 hour Monday, 1 hour Wednesday, and 1 hour Friday. Your brain actually needs that downtime to lock in memories. Forgetting a little bit is actually a good thing because it makes you work harder to remember it the next time. And just look at the data here. Cramming got students to about 49% correct. But spacing out the exact same amount of time, that jumped to 74%. That's a huge difference just from changing your schedule. And power-up number 2 is interleaving. This just means you mix things up. So instead of doing an hour of math, then an hour of history, you do 20 minutes of math, then 20 minutes of history, then 20 minutes of math again. Yeah, it feels harder. Your brain has to keep switching gears. But that's the point. Look at the results. Studying in blocks led to 30% accuracy. Interleaving, just mixing it up, more than doubled that to 63%. That mental struggle of switching contexts is exactly what makes the knowledge stick. So look, if you take away just one single thing from all this, make it this. Real learning, the kind that actually lasts, isn't passive. It's not something that just happens to you when you're staring at a textbook. It's an active process. It's something you do. You have to wrestle with the material. There's a great quote from the cognitive scientist Daniel Willingham that just says it all. Memory is the residue of thought. It's so perfect, right? What you remember isn't what you read. It's what you thought hard about. And that's exactly what retrieval, spacing, and interleaving force you to do. And that brings us to one last kind of mind-bending idea to leave you with. We've all been trained to think of tests as this big, scary judgment day, right? A tool just to measure what you've learned. But what if we have that completely backwards? What if the real purpose of a test isn't to measure learning at all, but to actually create